Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Xony, and today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go. Now let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. During the pandemic, my wife of 7 years was extremely frustrated with her hair. She, 35, had a short style with layers that required maintenance. Otherwise, it would grow to look like a mop on her head. I, 40, tried to help, but I'm not a hairstylist, and I accidentally made it worse. She resented me for a few weeks, but we had to make up because we were stuck in the house together. I told her I could set some money aside for her to ask her hairstylist friend if he'd be willing to come to the house to do her hair. He was willing to. While I was at work, my wife's job was shut down. But at least mine wasn't. I feel for the households that couldn't work at all. Anyway, I believe this guy was respectable because he was married with a 2-year-old kid. Besides that, we had security cameras. My wife knew about them, and I'd review them once a month. You can imagine my surprise when I noticed my wife go to where the living room camera was plugged in and attempt to unplug it. She wasn't looking at it, so she actually unplugged the wrong one. Then she answered the front door. It was the hairstylist. Now I was sitting forward in my desk chair. I couldn't believe I was watching something my wife didn't expect me to see. I wondered why she wanted to hide her actions, but I didn't have to wonder for long. The way they interacted seemed like close friends until he was done with her cut. She looked beautiful, and he moved her hair to the side, stroking her face. There was a moment shared between them just before he went in for a kiss on the lips. I rubbed my eyes and rewound the video. This couldn't be. I was happily married to my wife for 7 years, and he was married as well. It became clear my wife kissed him back, and it didn't end there. They kept kissing, and my wife started to undress. She led him to the couch, and I couldn't look. I did look, even though I didn't want to, because I had to know if she said anything about them or why it was happening, and if it would happen again. She didn't, but she did say she'd be in touch with him. There were other gaps in the recordings where she did unplug the camera. Something came over me. I was powered with the fuel of injustice. I printed pictures of him on top of her. A moment where his face was turned so you could tell it was him. I put them all over his clothes store and took pictures of the store with them on it. Then I posted it all on his business website. It is personal. Facebook and my wife's. When I got home, my wife had the front door barricaded like I was some kind of monster. I pushed my way in, and we had a screaming match. My adrenaline was through the roof because we had never screamed like this before. She had never cheated on me before, to my knowledge. I asked her over and over what made her have intimate with another married man. She kept saying she didn't need to tell me, so I just kept asking and telling her. I dedicated my life to her, so the least she could do was tell me why this happened. She finally admitted they used to date just before she met me, and since they were both tired of being stuck in the house with their spouse, they suddenly couldn't resist each other. The temptation of having someone new in a time so depressing was too great. My wife wasn't really apologetic or crying. She was just a little inconvenienced. I knew she didn't want to let her guard down or admit how bad this was. She wanted me to forgive her so everyone could go on with their lives. I told her that wasn't an option. She didn't want to destroy AP marriage or her own, but neither of them thought through what they were doing. Maybe they thought no one would find out, but now it was all over the internet and a store. AP wife divorced him, and he lost his business. I divorced my wife when she was forced to leave our house. I made it a huge neighborhood party while she loaded up a moving truck. I was grilling for the neighborhood, and loud music was playing. All the people in attendance thought my idea was great because she deserved to be embarrassed, and a pat on the back for getting through the divorce and winning my house back. At that farewell party, I met a woman that just moved into the neighborhood, and she and I may or may not become a thing in the near future. All I know is I'm happy with how my life has turned out ever since. Now let's get into today's second story. My wife 38, was trying to sell her car when she decided to betray me and destroy my hopes for the future. We were married for 4 years and everything was good. I guess I can't say great because we always struggled a little financially. I'm 40, had a job I really enjoyed that paid a little less than a more unpleasant or more demanding job. My wife always told me she just wanted me to be happy, and I told her the same. So she worked at her favorite clothing store. Not too terrible. At least, we both had jobs and could pay the bills. But I think my wife wanted luxury. I think she dreamed of being spoiled like a movie star. That's part of the reason she decided to sell her car. We just paid it off after years of making huge payments, and I was pretty upset. She didn't want to savor the time we had with it. She said she wanted to upgrade by selling it for cash so she could put a huge down payment on the next vehicle. It made sense, but I didn't really like this idea. My wife wanted a nicer car, and her mind was set on it, so she invited a man over to our house to come see and test drive it. But she waited until I was at work and didn't tell me about it. It wasn't until 3 days after his test drive that my wife asked me to take better pictures of the car and interior. After I did, I plugged my phone into the computer we both used, and when the screen came on, there was a chat box opened. In the most recent messages, she thanked him for his generosity, said she really enjoyed being with him, and asked when he could come over again. In earlier messages, she talked about trying to sell her car for an upgrade and how her husband was at work so he could come drive it around a little. I couldn't believe how bad she was at covering her tracks. There was another window open that showed her bank accounts, recent transactions, and the most recent thing was a deposit from PayPal for $200. Not enough to buy a car, but perhaps enough to buy some time in bed with a pretty woman. I was fuming, but it was hard to really feel furious when I couldn't believe she would do this. I trusted her. We were married. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right in front of me. I kept shaking my head, and my face was stuck in a scowl. I didn't know how to handle this. I kept telling myself my wife had to have a conscience, meaning I wouldn't have to wait long for her to come clean and break down in tears. I came home from work the next day, and she was still acting like everything was fine. While she was in the shower, I got on the computer. This time the chat box and windows were closed, but all I had to do was click login on Messenger, and I found their conversation. According to this, he was in our house and with my wife earlier that same day. I was really starting to feel the fury now. Not only had she failed to come clean or show any signs of remorse, but she brought him over and did it again. I didn't know it was possible to feel the level of anger I felt at that moment. I printed screenshots of the chat, closed the chat box, and put them in my nightstand just before my wife came out of the shower. I think she realized she hadn't had intimate with me in a week, and I was probably expecting it. Otherwise, I might get suspicious. She was already naked, so she got into bed with me and started getting really close. I was stiff as a board. But not the important part. I couldn't lay with her, and I couldn't keep pretending the way she was. I jumped out of bed, whipped open the drawer, and slapped the papers down on the bed with. I screamed at the top of my lungs to ask what this was. She jumped out of her skin and started breathing rapidly while trembling. She looked at the pages, then back to me. She said nothing. I yelled again, so she squeaked that she was sorry. She offered no defense. She was just terrified and wanted me to feel bad for scaring her. I said whatever happens from this point forward is what she brought on herself. So if she doesn't like it, she needs to rethink her actions. I gathered some essentials, the paper evidence, and the keys to the car she was trying to sell because I helped her pay it off. I went to my dad's house, who was 77 years old at this point, and he was just happy I was there to stay for a while. I didn't tell him what was going on as I filed for divorce. My supporters were my friends from work and the people who shared my passion with me. My wife wasn't able to sell or use the car since I took the keys, and when the divorce was final, it was awarded to me, and she had to move out. Infidelity screws a lot of people over, but I'm glad she did get out of the consequences. There were several times when she called me, really, and hating herself because she had a moment of clarity and saw what a piece of crap she was for doing that to me. She's had trouble connecting with anyone, even as friends, because she told me she feels like they can tell. She doesn't know who she is anymore. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I never saw the chat. And that's scared her. I've started going to counseling. At least I know that I'll know when I'm ready to start dating. I've started going to the gym to ease my stress. And before this, I was not a well-built person. That's another positive outcome. I'm in the best shape of my life.